Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are attending today's webinar. I am Scott Clayson, the Marketing Director at TimeSolv, and I want to, again, welcome you to our monthly Wednesday webinar. I hope everybody is fully recovered from Halloween activities last night. I know where we're located here in Minneapolis, it was a cold night. It was the coldest Halloween like in 11 years, they said, about 33, 34 degrees right around sunset time. So we didn't get as many trick-or-treaters as we normally do, and I think that had to do with the cold. So I do want to welcome everybody once again. I am recording this session, and so in case you need to duck out, I'll be sending the link later. And it occurred to me, you know, this is something we do the first Wednesday of every month. And one of our customers pointed out to me he was not going to be able to make the webinar today because, you know, it's the first of the month. And a lot of you, obviously, this is a really busy time where you are starting to draft your invoices from the previous month and get everything up and rolling. It's the first week of the month is a pretty busy week. So I am really thinking long and hard about moving the Wednesday webinar to perhaps like maybe the third week of the month and doing it on that Wednesday. I'll probably actually send out a survey of all of our client base to see what week would work best, but I'm willing to bet that more of you would be willing to attend these webinars if it was not the first Wednesday of the month. So I appreciate that being pointed out to me. So again, the purpose of these webinars is that, as you probably have seen, we send out a tip of the week every Monday from me. That is basically, all I do is go to our support staff every week and say, hey, what have you been hearing or what's been coming up recently that you feel like you've been answering more calls than usual on that we should talk about as a tip of the week? Because we want to make sure everyone here is getting the most out of TimeSolv as possible. And it never fails that something within our system, they'll feel like, our support people feel like, well, I've gotten more calls recently about this or whatever it might be. So this webinar then is to recap the previous tips of the week that I sent out via email, in this case back in October. So with that being said, let's get going for this week. Again, housekeeping items. Everyone here on this call is on mute. There is a way to, and I will be answering questions near the end. If you're looking at your screen, you should see some dots at the top of your screen, and one of those is kind of a dialog bubble. And if you click on that, that is a chat box where you can enter questions. And again, I will take some later, near the end, only because oftentimes you may have a question that you ask, but I end up answering it over the course of finishing up talking about a topic. And for many of you that have attended this before, you might know that if it's a question that I can't answer because I'm not a support person, I'm the marketing person, I will definitely find the answer and either email you directly or email the whole group the answer if it was something that was really a big topic item that I couldn't answer the question for. So this should take about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. We'll for sure end at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and not go much further than that. So let's get started here and talk about what we're going to cover today. So we have four main topics. The first one is from a tip of the week that we sent out back at the beginning of October, how to create in TimeSolv a simple matter budget. And we'll talk more about that in detail because we do have very detailed matter budgets that you can create very complex matter budgets. But in this case, we're talking about simple matter budgets. The second topic then that has come up actually a few times is using the time search feature that we have to actually do your daily work and create time entries from that page. And I'll explain a little bit more when we get there. And then the last two topics are kind of intertwined. The first one is, and a lot of people don't know this because not many systems allow you to do this, you can take any invoice that you've sent in TimeSolv, no matter how old it is, and void it back to draft and make edits to that invoice. The flip side of that is most people are going to want to make sure they still can use the same invoice number from the original invoice before they voided it back. And I'll show you where to make sure that happens. That's basically our fourth tip. So the last two will basically be kind of together as one. So that's the agenda for today's webinar. So let's get started. So creating a simple matter budget, what I want to do is show you where you do that in TimeSolv, how you go about and where you enter the what you can budget in a simple matter budget, and that is the hours, the fees, the expenses, or the invoice. And it could be and or all of the above. There's also an important tool that can allow you to not exceed the budget no matter what. Like you literally won't be able to put in a time entry or won't be able to send an invoice if you exceed the budget if you'd like. And then this really is the first step toward more. So let's jump into TimeSolv and we'll take a look now at how you set up that matter budget. And this is something that if you have negotiated maybe an invoice cap with a client, or you know that you can only dedicate so many hours of time or so many fees, whatever it might be, you can put that into a budget here and have it locked in as you go about working on the matter. So you want to head over here to Clients and Matters, and let's go and find a specific matter. This one's labeled Jen. So when you're in the matter, you'll notice that you have all these tabs that you're probably used to seeing. Now you want to go to the Budget tab. This is where if you were to go ahead and move forward with a more complex matter plan, you would actually check this box. And the more complex matter plan within TimeSolv allows you to actually build out all the tasks it will take to finish the matter. You can assign timekeepers to each of those tasks, assign them hours, and then it'll multiply that timekeeper's rate by the hours you've assigned to them for a specific task. And then all those tasks will roll up into an entire matter budget. So we're not going to be talking about that today, but if you need more help on that, you can book a time with one of our support staff and they'll walk you through how to do that. It's essentially project management. In this case, we're just going to be doing a simple budget here. So the billing arrangement and the billing event and the budget buy, these are all set here by, there's nothing to change. If you did enable the matter plan, then you would have more options in how you would do the billing. But since we're not doing that, we can sort of ignore this top part here and we can get into what are the things you can budget for in a very simple way for a matter. And that is, you can budget by the hours that you want to put into the matter. You could do it by the fees, and the fees will essentially just be the number of hours worked times whatever the rate is of those timekeepers. So if you only want to have $1,000 worth of fees, well, if you have one timekeeper, they only charge $10 an hour. They can work a lot more hours than a timekeeper who charges $500 an hour. So you could cap it at fees, or you could do it by hours, or you can do both. You can do a budget for every one of these 4 items. You can also then, obviously expenses is a fairly self-explanatory place where you can budget. You can also budget by the invoice, so that an invoice, you cannot send an invoice out if it exceeds a certain dollar amount. And I'll show you how you do that in just a minute. So you'll be able to, once you create that budget, see the actual amount that you have against the budget, how much hours, fees, expenses, and so on you have remaining. And here's the important thing I want to show you over here, this prevent hours, prevent fees, etc. from exceeding budget, and what happens when you check the box or uncheck that box. So let's use a simple scenario of hours that we're going to budget for this matter. We know there's a certain number of hours that we want to budget. So we are going to budget, let's say, 5 hours for this matter, and we're not going to check any box preventing the hours from exceeding budget. We're going to hit save. And let's go over and make a time entry now for this particular matter. So we're going to go over here. We're going to find Jerry and friends, and the matter is Jen. And I'm going to put in 6 hours, even though we only budgeted 5. And when you go to save that, it'll save the entry, but it gives you kind of this yellow light, basically saying, hey, we saved this time entry successfully, but you did exceed the budget that you'd put down. So it's kind of just the yellow warning light, but it doesn't affect anything that you can do. You can still move forward, put it on an invoice, do whatever you want to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this and go back and show you what happens when you actually check that box saying that you want to prevent hours from exceeding budget. So we have the 5. We're going to check this box, hit save, go back to our time entry, find our matter. We're going to put in 6 hours here, hit save and new. And now you'll notice it's not saving that time entry. And now we have the stoplight, basically. The matter hours budget has been exceeded. So if you allocate, or you're saying we're only going to budget 10 hours worth of work, 5 hours worth of work, and somebody tries to put in an entry that's more than what you budgeted for, they literally can't make that time entry. And I've called this before. This is the walk of shame that a timekeeper would have to make down to the admin of whoever set the budget and say, hey, I guess we were only budgeted to do 5 hours for this work on this matter, and I've done 6, so we need to figure out something. So again, in real time, you can realize if you've exceeded the budget, which is a great feature, we think. So let's go back under our same budget here and show this how this would work again from a fee. The fee point of view is pretty, you know, again, it's kind of obvious. If we want to say we're not going to exceed $750 and we're going to prevent that, and we don't have to budget the hours at all. We'll just say we want to have the fees capped at $750. And again, I go back, and the same thing's going to happen here now, as you can guess. My rate's $250 an hour, and let's say I try to put in 5 hours. It's going to, again, give me that same thing. The matter fee budget now has been exceeded, not the hours necessarily. So that's an easy way to cap if you've decided that you're not going to charge above a certain amount. You could certainly do it by fees and then exceed the budget. That might be the easiest thing to do as a firm instead of hours. You can also do it as on the invoice, and then you wouldn't have to worry at all about how many hours are being put in, what that equals in fees, expenses, but you can guarantee that, hey, we're not going to exceed $1,000 on an invoice, no matter how many hours have been put in and whatever it might add up to. But the one thing you do need to make sure you do is check this box to prevent the invoice over budget. Otherwise, it will send that invoice and it'll be over budget check. We'll hit save here. Let's go in and make some time entries against this matter and then try to generate an invoice, and you'll see how it works here. So we got $1,000 is going to be our cap on our invoice. And we're going to go back to my rate's $250. So we're going to do, like, say, 5 hours worth of work. That's going to total $1,250, as you can see. So let's go ahead and do an invoice, a draft invoice. Create a new draft invoice here for Jerry and Friends. And you can see it's showing the amount, it's $1,250. You know, it's not put a cap at $1,000. And let's go ahead and try to send it here. So we're going to send, and yeah, I want to send it. And boom, now this is where it says, hey, your budgeted amount has exceeded. You can't send it. So what are you going to do to send it? Well, there's a couple things you can do. You can click on it here under you can always click on the dollar amount to edit an invoice. You can go to the time entry here and edit the time entry if you'd like, and maybe just change it to the fixed amount. And it's just going to be $1,000. Okay, and you can update that. And then let's say on the invoice itself, you don't want it to show like the hours that are, that they put in, the rate and that sort of thing. So you could edit your billing template here, and I'm going to choose another one here that I have set up. I'll show you how you can set it up. You can go to the time tab here for your billing template, and I've unchecked the rate and the amount. I can still show the hours that I worked, which is fine in the description, but I'm just not going to show on the invoice the rate, the amount. Okay, so I'm going to choose to that billing template. Now I can go back here, and it's set at $1,000. And when I view it, again, you can just click on that little magnifying glass icon now in your sent invoices. And now it's going to show, it's only showing me the hours worked and what the total fees were, because we changed that to a fixed fee amount. So this is a way to if you've exceeded it, because of the hours that you worked, but you promised it was going to be, or you have a contract, it's going to be $1,000. This is the way you can do that at the invoice level because of the way you budgeted. I think the best way would be to cap it at the fees level. So then everything gets, and you check that box that prevent the fees from exceeding the budget. So then you would know ahead of time before you get to this stage, the invoicing stage, that, it's a Houston, we have a problem. So that would be the way that you would create a simple budget in TimeSolv. Under the clients and matters, under budget, put in the hours, put in the fees, the expenses, the invoice, and then choose whether you want to prevent your timekeepers from actually exceeding that budget. And that's a hard code sort of way of making sure you're not going to go over whatever it is that you've decided you're going to allocate for hours, time, money, whatever it's going to be for that invoice. Okay, so that is tip number 1 of our today's webinar. So let's talk about tip 2, using our time search tool for daily work. And this is where, again, you can quickly find a project or a matter that you're working on. You want to see the hours without having to run a report. Then I'll show you the various search options that we have and sorting options, how to find specific matters or clients, and then seeing the hourly totals. This will be fairly brief, but I think it's a nice little feature that a lot of people probably don't use, especially if you're kind of new to TimeSolv and you're used to kind of an old way of seeing your time entries. So what you want to do, again, to recap, you guys are all TimeSolv clients. This is people really do like our time entry calendar here, where you can see how many hours that you've put in every day of the week, what your totals are, your monthly totals, your amount. Great snapshot in time. But the drawback is you can only see a list of entries, all your time entries by day in this view. You can't just show me the whole darn month. I just want to see all my time entries in a list. We get that question a lot. Go under time and down to search, okay? And then by default, our search field, the date field, will go back 2 months. So you can just simply hit, and when you get to that page, by the way, you'll see this. You won't see the more options. I was here earlier. So again, if you want to see all your time entries in a list for the last, say, 2 months, you can do whatever dates you want, and then you just hit search. And it's going to list all of my time entries, and it's going to list them in reverse chronological order. My most recent time entries at the top and going back to August. You can always sort by any one of these column headings. So if you want to, for whatever reason, you like seeing things, if you want to do a month and it's going to be just, you want to see all of October's, for example, and you sort of just want to see it in a, chronological way where the first entries of the month were at the top and they roll down to the bottom. You can certainly do it that way just by clicking on here and sorting the column. Important to note, you can also view your totals always down here at the bottom and the amount, similar to that, when you're on the calendar view. The other thing that a lot of people they miss is that you could sit and live on this view and start and do new time entries from right here at this screen. You'll notice over here, you can click to create a new time entry. I know a lot of older systems, like I said, have a list view of your time entry. So if you're used to that, you're not quite ready to move to that calendar view, you like seeing all of your time entries in a list, this could be your daily work screen instead of the calendar one that we have. If this will satisfy sort of the way you like to do things. We want to try to make things as flexible as possible for you. So you could do your new time entries here just like you would any other time entry on the other default time entry screen. The other thing I know a lot of attorneys like that we've heard about is you're going to start doing some work for one particular client or matter, and you want to see all the previous time entries for that client and matter in an easy snapshot way. And this is where you can satisfy that desire. So we could go back, let's go back to September 1st, let's say, and I know I want to see all the time entries for a case I'm working on. I'm working for Best Buy on a case against Samsung, whatever it might be. So I just started typing the name of the matter. You could start typing the name of the client if you wanted to, and it'll bring up, the name of the client and all the matters for that client. And again, you can do it by whatever date range you want. If you don't remember the exact, maybe you have a numbering system for the client and matter, or whatever it might be, or maybe you're a client and then all the matters are a numbering system, you can always go under here to more options. And then if you have admin privileges or you have given permissions levels to a higher level, you can see everybody's hours, time entries, I should say, in the firm. And then you can also click over here and all of your clients and matters will come up here in a list, and you can scroll down and find the client and matter that you're searching for. And again, it's a nice way then of quickly getting to like, okay, here's all, I just have one time entry in this time period for this particular matter that I did back on September 18th. But if you have, several dozen time entries for one particular matter, and you just want to see them in that list row, this is how you would do it. So I should also mention, if we clear this back out to all and do maybe even a bigger sweep here, I don't want to do a year. That was a mistake. So let's say, all right, let's just say August 1. All my time entries from August 1st to, I need to take this out to 2. So I have all my time entries, from August 1st to today, and I'm going to reverse it and show it from today going backwards. Talking about the status level of each of these entries, it's important to note what these words mean. If you see that it just says, I have approvals turned on in my demo account, you may not have that, but if you see the little clock here, basically that means it's a time entry that has not been placed on either a draft invoice and has not been on a sent invoice. If you see pending, this will tell you that this means that it has been placed, this time entry, on a draft invoice, but has not actually been sent yet. And then, of course, billed is obvious. This is a time entry that has been put on a sent invoice, so it is out there to the client. And obviously, any time entry that has not been placed on a draft invoice or has not been billed, you can go ahead and edit. So you can click on Edit here and then do whatever you need to do to edit that time entry, since it's hasn't been placed anywhere else within the system. So again, a little, I don't want to call it a trick. I mean, maybe, it's the time search function, but it could serve as your daily way of seeing all your time entries in a very simple list view, and then you can do several things for it, and finding a particular list of all the time entries for a specific matter, which I think is a really helpful thing. You can do it here without having to necessarily run a report that gets downloaded into an Excel file or PDF or whatever. So a nice little tool, I think. Okay, so first, we're moving along quick. That's good. We may not go the full 60 minutes today, so that's nice. So let's get into tips 3 and 4 today, okay? And that is voiding any sent invoice back to draft. No matter how old it is, you can send it back to draft and edit it. However, and there's a big however that we'll go over, if you've already allocated payments to that invoice, so they're marked as paid, you have to unallocate the payment from the invoice before you can void it back to draft. And I'll show you how you do that. It's essentially, you have to, if you're pulling at the, you're unspooling this sent invoice back to draft, you have to start with the thread of the allocated payment. Then you can go ahead and make any edits you need to make and send it again. And the tip number 4 part is many people have asked the question, well, I want to make sure that when I resend it, I'm using the same invoice number as the original one that I did back a month ago, 3 months ago, 3 years ago, whatever it might be. You have that client who you sent them the invoice in February of 2017. They're just now getting around to disputing it, and they have an issue with it, whatever it might be. They're correct. You have to make an edit on that invoice. They've already have a payment maybe, and so you're going to unallocate that payment from the invoice, void it back to draft, make the edit. I'll show you how to change the invoice number so it's the same invoice number that you originally used, and send it again to the client, okay? It sounds a little complicated maybe, and it's something that if you don't do a lot of, you may not remember necessarily all these steps. That's why we're here at support, and that's why this is recorded. I'll send it out to you, and you could revisit this again. And we have our blog post, our tip of the week that we sent out as well. So let's first talk about when we go to our sent invoices. we have our list. And you can, again, do any sort of search criteria, whatever it might be, to find the particular invoice. And you find the invoice that you need to void back to draft. And it's very simple. Let's just say new client, new matter. And you just check the box here. You hit void back to draft. It's going to give you a warning telling you of all the things that would happen by voiding it back to draft. Hit OK. Oh, I can't void it back to draft now because payments have already been applied, so it can't be voided. And if you notice, if you look closely before you try to void it back to draft, it says that it's paid already. So for this particular new client, new matter invoice, I'm going to have to unallocate the payment before I void it back. So we go under our payment screen here, and we're going to find that payment that was allocated. And in this case, I'm going to start typing, again, new client, new matter, show me status of all payments in the last 30 days. And it's showing me that, okay, yeah, I have a $2,000 payment that was made by new client, and I've already allocated some of it, obviously, because I have $925 left. So here's an important thing. You don't need to void the payment itself. So if I go over here and say, hey, I'm just going to void the payment, you don't need to do that. Keep the payment there. You're going to end up allocating it again to the updated invoice at some point in time, right? So keep the payment there. We're just going to actually unallocate it from that specific invoice. So we just want to click here where it says reallocate. Click there. And it's going to, you click on this tab that says, show me the previous allocations that were made. Right now, new allocations, there's none to be made. There's not a new invoice that I can make an allocation towards. So I'm going to go to previous allocations. And yeah, sure enough, here's invoice number 147. The amount was $1,000.75, and I allocated it today, as it turns out, because I was getting ready for this demo. There's no balance due or anything like that. So you can either delete it here, or if you had multiple allocations you had to unallocate, you would just hit delete all allocations. So I'm just going to hit delete. So this operation can't be undone. Do you want to proceed? Yeah, I want to proceed. And now you can see that, hey, we still have that payment here. We could allocate it. We're not going to. So that's the first thread that we're pulling now in voiding this back to draft. So now we're going to head back over to our sent invoices. Notice for invoice 147, it no longer says that it's paid. It shows that we actually now have a balance of $1,000.75. So now let's also take note, we know this is invoice number 147, and that's important to keep in kind of the tip 4 part of things, where we want to eventually, when we send this back, keep that same invoice number. So write this down somewhere, keep track of it at least, that the invoice number for the originally was 147. So we're going to check the box here. Once you do that, we're going to void it back to draft. It's going to, again, give me this warning. This time, however, it's going to let me void it back to draft. And you can see it was voided to draft successfully. There's no more 147. It goes from 146 to 148. So now we can go back under drafts. And again, this could be for any invoice that you've ever done. And we're going to see that we have new client, new matter, $1,000.75. Okay. Now, if I want to do whatever edits I need to do, because new client is going to be an old client really quick if I don't fix this invoice and the issue that they have with it. So again, I'm going to go in and click on the dollar amount here, and maybe, yeah, there was a problem with the time, whatever it was. So you're going to do some sort of adjustment. So let's say you're going to knock off, minus $200, and it is a adjustment for time entry error, whatever it might be. Or maybe you're going to give a discount. You're making that change that you have to make to this sent invoice. You're going to hit save, go back. We're going to see that the amount is now $875. Let's give it a quick preview. And you can see it's going to show adjustment for time error of $200, and then it's at $875. So it's good to roll, but don't send it yet. If you send it, it's going to automatically assign the next invoice number in the sequence that we have. If you notice, we're up to invoice number 152. If we were to send that edited invoice right now, it would be invoice number 153. So what do? This is where we can change the number back to where we want it to be, because we wrote down that we want it to be number 147. So we go under invoices here to settings. And our settings show us this line here. The next invoice number is scheduled to be 153, like we just saw. The most recent one before that was 152. So again, we're going to write this number down. The next one is 153. That's what we want to go back to eventually. Okay. But we want the next invoice that we send out to be invoice 147. And hit save. Now we're ready to send that edited invoice. I'm going to go back under to our drafts. We're going to click on this bad boy here, and we are going to send it. And it should start downloading here. You can see invoice 147. Okay, and we go under invoices to sent. There's 147 again, but it's only for $875. We're back in the sequence. Now we could go back and allocate that payment again if we wanted to. Now here's the other important thing. While the system, because it said our next invoice number was 147, well, the system's going to know the next time you send an invoice, 148's taken, 149's taken, 150 taken, the next one will be 153. However, if you have several voided invoices, like for example, say 150 has to be sent back into draft, and then you send some other different invoices. Well, those other different invoices will fill in that 150 gap. The system will fill in any gaps between what you just did and any ones that have already been taken up. So let's make sure we go back to invoices, settings. See, it says 148. Well, it's going to, is the next number sequentially. Well, 148's already taken, so then it'll trip up to 149. Well, that one's already taken. Then it'll go up to 150. Oh, 150 is not taken because I voided that back to draft 2. You see where I'm going with that? So you want to make it go back to the most recent invoice that you sent, the highest number, and we know that that's 153 because we took note of that before. 153, hit save. And now you're back to where you were before. The next invoice that you send will have invoice number 153. Okay, so again, a couple important points to take away here. You can take any invoice that you've ever sent in the history of your time in TimeSolv and void it back to draft as long as the invoice has any payments allocated towards it unallocated. And again, you saw how you do that. You go under payments, you find the payment that was applied to it, and you just remove that allocation, okay? So that is basically kind of how it all works. So I will take some questions. In fact, I already have some that have come in. Somebody wrote earlier, not able to void an invoice once a payment. Yes, that's correct. And you saw how, yeah, you can't void it once the payment's been applied, but you can unallocate the payment, then void it back. So why was the payment not allocated before you sent the voided invoice? I guess I'm not 100% sure what we did. The payment was, you can have any payments in the system that aren't allocated towards any invoice. They can just sit there and wait. So that's why it didn't show the payment being allocated. We already unallocated it, went and voided it back to the draft, and went from there. I hope I'm answering that question okay. Maybe I'm a little bit unclear. So again, we're going to take any paid invoice. We're going to unallocate any payments, the payments that have been made towards it, then void it back to draft, okay? I have another question coming in. I have yellow triangle with an explanation in the draft invoice, how to resolve and edit. Well, it depends on, yeah, that will happen sometimes. Oftentimes that happens. Usually it'll tell you if you click on the yellow triangle itself, it'll tell you that, and the issue I've seen with it before, for example, if you don't allocate or if you don't check how you want the invoice to be sent, for example, this one here, I'm going to check the box and try to send it. And it said one was not sent due to errors, and there's that yellow I hover over it and it says no delivery method was selected. So then I would just click that and try to send it again. And that, I haven't seen many, others in my work in it. Support could probably answer those questions, more specific detail. The question has come in, don't we want the client to know that the payment was received and applied? Yes, of course. If you've already, this goes back to every situation is different as to what's going to make you have to void a sent invoice back to draft. If you have a client that a payment, was received and you have applied it originally, and you, tell the client, I received your payment, I applied it. You don't necessarily need to tell them that you're unallocating it to that one particular invoice. You could just say, hey, look, I got your payment. I know we need to fix the invoice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the fixed invoice, and that may or may not affect the payment. If it means they have to get a credit or you need to refund them, you can certainly do that because the invoice is maybe changing, the value is changing. It's going from $1,000 to $750. They had paid you $1,000. Well, you would allocate $750 of that $1,000 payment and then cut them a refund check of $250 or whatever it might be. Would be the best way to handle it, I think, in that situation. And so Eva's asking the question, hi, Eva, I'm glad you're with us today. You were a nice help last Wednesday webinar. Sometimes the yellow triangle appears if you have selected email, but no email is set up for the client. Yeah, that's good as well. If you want to email the invoice to a client, but you haven't specified a specific email address for the contact. So that could be another reason why you see that yellow triangle. So a question about the matter budget from Eva. Can only the admin or person who created the budget make changes to the budget? That's a good question. Let's find out. I am not 100% sure. So what we'll do is this. We'll go to one of my professionals over here, Tony Hill, and let's look at his permissions. And he has, basically what I'm guessing is this, view only, he'd be able to see the budget, but not change anything. If you allow them all access to their clients, then yes. So let's go and just say view only for Tony Hill here. Hit save. Let me log out and log in as Tony Hill. Let's go under the clients and matters. Well, he's only viewing the ones that are assigned to him even. That's how we have it set. For budgeting, yeah, he can, because he's been assigned access to those matters. So how you kind of lock that down, I'll have to find out exactly, but there should be a way that you could allow that only the admin people could change the budget and stuff, because I know that's an important consideration. Potentially, let's try this. Let's look at his permissions here again. Say view only for all of this stuff, and see how you can unchecking the access to assigned matters only, and see if that makes a difference here. I'm not really sure. So it looks like if you assign a matter to a particular timekeeper, yes, they can, edit the budget. Let's look under. He should be able to now see all clients and matters. So let's go into one that he's not assigned to. Huh. You can notice he could sort of change these numbers all he wants, but there's no save button. He could try to change it. There's nowhere to save. So he can mess around with his numbers, but nothing's going to happen to it. Okay, so it looks like he could do it, but because there's no save button, because he has not been assigned to that matter. If you give him that view only for clients, they will not be able to edit that. So the answer ends up being yes. You can make sure that only the admins and people who are assigned those to those matters are the ones who can change the budget. Good question, Eva. Okay, I don't have any other questions that have come in at this point, which means that we can be done a little bit earlier than normal. I usually said 45 to 60 minutes. We're at 12:40 here in Minneapolis, so gives us a little bit of extra time. I do appreciate, and like I said, I am really thinking of doing these Wednesday webinars the third Wednesday of the month. And since I have you all here and you're the ones attending, just quickly in that chat, I'll ask the question and just answer, yes or no. Would you like it better if these webinars were not the first Wednesday of the month, but were later in the month? Please give me an answer in the chat. I'd love to find out, since you're the ones who made it here on November 1st, the first Wednesday of the month. Yes, yes, yes. I've seen a lot of yeses. These myopic marketing guys, all we do is think about ourselves. And only reason I chose the first Wednesday of the month was that it was kind of easy to remember. It'd be the first Wednesday, and then it didn't even dawn on me until yesterday that actually is the busy time for you all, especially the admins of TimeSolv, when you're putting together the invoices. So I see a lot of people saying yes. One person did say the first Wednesday is better. A couple said no matter what date, they don't really matter. Others, yeah, we have reconciliations and billing at the beginning of the month. And somebody else says they actually have another seminar the first Wednesday of each month. So yeah, there's not going to be a perfect answer. Maybe the second Wednesday of the month, once you've gotten all of your invoicing out. Most people will have by the second Wednesday, you would think, of the month. So maybe I'll do that, and I'll send out a questionnaire to all of our firm owners. But since, hey, you guys were, you guys are the ones who took the time to show up here on the first day of the month, so I will give more weight to your guys' suggestions. But yeah, maybe the second Wednesday then would be better for people. I do appreciate everyone attending these. Hope you get something out of it and learn something new every week. So I will be, like I said, send a recording later in the day of this webinar, so you can go back and make reference to it. We always have the blog posts that were the tip of the weeks, that were the written form of what we just went over. And please, 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 as always, if you have any questions, please make sure that you send an email to support@timesolv.com, or you call our 1-800 number. You can see the number there, 1-800-715-1284. So I won't take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you guys sitting through this, learning a little bit more about TimeSolv, helping you guys become more efficient. And you'll take a look out for a new Wednesday webinar date. We'll probably, I'm thinking now, seeing your guys' feedback, the second Wednesday of December is when we would do it. I got to look at flip the calendar. I didn't do that yet. So the second Wednesday in December, good Lord, you would think I'd be able to flip a calendar. That would be the 13th of December, Wednesday, December 13th. So if you want to kind of make note of that right now on your guys' calendars, because you know you like attending these, please do. And then look for the heads up of the email to register for the webinar. So everybody have a great day, evening, November, and we'll talk to you hopefully that second week in December. Have a great day, everybody.